What's up? It's Raphael with NBA Draft Junkies. Have another guest for you today. What I'm doing now is I'm wanting to hear what the fans think or how they would like their favorite team to draft. And so my guest for today is Noah Magaro-George. And did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, perfect, man. It was exactly right. Exactly right.
So instead of me telling them who you are, how about you explain to the audience or just introduce yourself and everything that you do? And because you're a fan, but you're a little bit more than a fan. You're kind of like an active fan, if that's the best way to describe it.
Sure. Yeah, so I write about the San Antonio Spurs for SB Nation on their site called Pounding the Rock. I do a lot of stuff there. You know, I do some draft stuff that I've gotten into the last couple of years. I do some game recaps. I do player evaluations, all that good stuff. And I also have a YouTube channel that's the same as my name. So I do, again, all Spurs-related stuff there. And I'm a San Antonio kid, you know, born and raised there. So, yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know about me.
All right, so how did you get started? And the reason I'm asking is because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are, you know, either watching this video, subscribe to my channel, or just want to get involved in sports. And everybody has a different path. And so one of the things I wanted to do is kind of get your background. So maybe if there's somebody out there that wants to write or just that's looking for a platform to showcase their talent and their skills, that you can provide them with some information so they can get started.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, I'm from San Antonio. I've been a Spurs fan pretty much my whole life. I mean, they're the only team out there. And I knew that I wanted to do something involving basketball, sports. And when I went to school in Dallas, in the Dallas area at the University of North Texas, I kind of made my mind up. I was going to do broadcast news, try to be some sort of, you know, sports broadcaster and news. And as I went through my schooling, it was pretty hard to find a job in, you know, being a sportscaster or working in sports in any capacity. And, you know, I wrote in school about, you know, our teams. And I also started writing about the San Antonio Spurs for a site called Air Alamo, which is part of Fansided. And from there, I got an offer to write with Project Spurs, which is like an independent site. And, you know, I love my time there. And I eventually ended up moving on to Pounding the Rock, where I'm a contracted writer there. And I get paid to write. And, you know, it's just progressed slowly but surely. And, you know, for anybody who's looking to get into it, you know, everybody takes a different path, whether it be, you know, you go straight from school to writing, or maybe you were involved in basketball and, you know, in a scouting, or, you know, you're in the front office and you end up being a writer that way. I mean, there's a bunch of different avenues to get into, you know, the sports media. And I'd say, you know, if you want to try it, go for it. But definitely be aware that, you know, it is a tough industry to break into. But if you're willing to put in the work and you feel like you know what you're talking about and you're willing to learn from other people and network, I think it's a great industry to be in.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know that was my major in school. When I was in high school, I took some TV broadcasting courses that, to be honest with you, I had a college degree in TV broadcasting courses before I graduated high school, just because at the school I went to, maybe it was like, I'd say we took maybe it was 4 class periods out of the day, but we did radio, TV, and I knew how to edit. I knew how to direct. We had rotations. And by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I was directing the superintendent of the public school districts, his show on public access TV. And once I went to college, you know, it's like starting over from scratch. You know, the first day we're in our major and they're showing kids like, this is what white balance is. And I'm just like,
yeah.
So college for me was kind of boring in a sense as far as my major. I didn't learn anything new. And then when I graduated, I wanted to work in sports, and then I got out of it. And the next thing I know, I was just so far away from what I wanted to do in my major, then I had to circle back. So for you, your path is going to be different because you're already working at a young age, and you've kind of built a reputation, obviously, and you're getting paid. Even if it's $10 a month, most people do not get paid to work in sports at a young age. Yeah. It's a lot of free grunt work, and you're just hoping to get someone to look at you. So you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's crazy because in school, it's like, even for like the school news station or the school newspaper, if you were putting in work there, you were getting paid even if it was minimally. And then coming out of school and, finding, I worked like a normal job. Like I worked in retail, and then I worked in Uber to try to continue pursuing this for a little while before I ended up getting more money to be paid here so I could be part-time doing other stuff. But it's like going from that to now, when I first started writing about sports outside of school, it was free. It was completely free. And I had to, build a reputation, build a name with myself with this fan base. Because even though I've been a Spurs fan my whole life, I knew I wanted to work in sports or with basketball, but I didn't necessarily go, it has to be with the Spurs. But when I graduated, I was like, you know what, this is a team I know a lot about. I know the history. I'm really passionate about NBA basketball and just basketball in general. I think I'm going to try to pursue it with this team because, I have people I went to high school with, college with, who also Spurs fans. And little by little, it was like a few years ago, I had about 200 followers. And then at the end of last year, I had like 500 followers. And this out of nowhere this year, I started, working on different projects from writing to video stuff. And it just ended up becoming like, I don't know, where I had, close to 2,500 followers on Twitter. So it was like, I feel like it is a slow grind, but once you start getting that audience and maintaining it, I think is really important, just talking to fans, because I think a lot of times people get lost in this, you're a professional and therefore you're better than the fans. They get lost in that. They kind of see themselves as better. I try to see myself as, I'm on their level. I still have stuff to learn. I'd love to hear their opinions and know what they're thinking. And I think that's really important because I hear it all the time, and I kind of roll my eyes when people say, fake media or, the media thinks they're better than everybody. But to some extent, I think that some people and members of the media may see themselves as better. And I think it's just to see yourself as an equal, maybe more educated, but still an equal. You're still, you're just, at the end of the day, everybody's a human being. You got to treat everybody with respect. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been an awesome journey. I hope to continue it. I really want to pursue this. So again, thank you for having me on here. This is another, avenue for me to just get more people, seeing me, hear what I can say. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's reciprocated because you invited me on your show. Excuse me, I was a guest on your show last week. And so it's kind of like cross-promoting in a sense.
Sure.
When you reached out to me, I definitely wanted to, get you on my show and, just kind of talk about the draft, something I love doing. And even though I'm a Blazers fan, my mom is born and raised in San Antonio. So, I grew up hearing about the Spurs. She used to buy me Spurs shirts. My grandparents live not too far from the Alamo Dome. Just, maybe 15 minutes away. And so, I guess my fondest memory as a Blazers fan, the Spurs, and I'm sure you can remember the Memorial Day shot,
with Sean
Elliott over Rasheed Wallace. Oh man, that was devastating. I was a kid at the time, but that was probably one of the worst sports moments of my life, simply because my mom, who doesn't necessarily care too much about basketball, she knows the Spurs, but just hearing her brag around the house about my team losing. The same thing when in '96 when Texas beat Nebraska in the Big 12 championship game, and so anyway.
I totally get that. I totally get my mom. She's not from San Antonio, and so she kind of just was a fair weather Spurs fan. And when LeBron came in the league, she kind of fell in love with LeBron. She wanted to be this big LeBron fan wherever he goes. She was kind of following. And when they were playing the finals in 2013, we made a bet. Put some money on it. And when Ray Allen hit that three to send it to Game 7, that was a huge moment for her. She was so happy, but I was absolutely devastated. And we know what happened. The Spurs lost that finals series. So I get that. My mom, I love her to death. She likes basketball. I don't think she likes it as much as I do, but man, that was tough. That was really tough.
Yeah, so we can definitely relate on that. So let's get into the draft. Now, I know you're a pretty young guy, and this is probably your first time seeing the Spurs in the lottery, or if the last time they were in the lottery, you were probably really young, but this is new territory. You're probably not used to, covering the Spurs, having a draft pick this high. So with them picking number 11 in this draft, I wanted to kind of pick your brain and see which prospects that you would like to see the Spurs take, or not even select, but maybe just take a hard look at.
Sure. Yeah, and you're right. I'm only 24 years old, so this is the first time the Spurs have been in the lottery since Tim Duncan. So the first, this will be the second time in my life. The first time with Duncan, I was in diapers, so I don't remember that.
Right.
Of course, I remember his career very fondly, but I don't remember the last time we were in the lottery. I don't have memories of that, but I will of this one. And they do have the 11th pick, and one of the guys who he's somebody who I'm not really sure will be there. But if he is, I think they should really legitimately take a look at him, just because I don't really believe in drafting for fit or need when you don't have that, superstar guy, that guy who's going to, take you to the playoffs and hopefully further. Is Killian Hayes. I think for me, he's at the very top of the list in terms of prospects in this class. I really like what he brings to the table. I think he's a really solid team defender. He's a good defensive playmaker. Obviously, we know he's a good passer, and I know a lot has been made about, his one-handedness. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. He's super young. I think that's something you can learn, you can kind of be groomed out of, I suppose. And then I think he has a lot of offensive potential. I heard you say it on one of your shows. He kind of reminds you of D'Angelo Russell in terms of like what he may be able to bring to the table in terms of offense. And, he isn't there as a shooter yet, but I think he could be. And I think he has that sort of craftiness where he's not really playing above the rim, but he is he is crafty. He's somebody who knows how to get around the court, get to where he wants to be, and, plays below the rim. And I like him a lot. And I think out of all the prospects, like I said earlier, he's my favorite guy in this class. So if he somehow miraculously falls to San Antonio at 11, I don't think they can pass him up, even with DeJounte, Derek, DeMar, Lamar, all these guys who need touches, and even Lonnie and Keldon, with an abundance of guards. Even so, I don't think they can pass up on him.
Right. So that was my next question. So you said you don't care about fit simply because there's not a superstar that you see in this draft or even available at number 11. Now, if they draft a guard, it's going to be a logjam at guard, even at the wing. So if you selected a guy at number 11, like let's say it was Killian, where do you or how do you expect him to fit into their rotation based off the roster being as is today?
Yeah, so that is going to be tough. But what I do know is Marco Bellinelli and Brent Forbes, two guys who combined for about 40-ish minutes per game last season, they're off the books. They don't have to bring them back. And I wouldn't recommend bringing them back. Both guys pretty defensive as far as defense goes. They're liabilities and they're shooters. But at this point, I don't think that they really make up for it. They're just so one-dimensional that I just don't think – unless you have that guy who can and the team defense to be able to make up for that, I don't think there's any worth in bringing them back. So that's 40 minutes per game right there. Patty Mills was a guy who played 21 minutes per game all season. He's someone who I could see them putting him on the back burner potentially, like they did in the bubble. I know it was an 8-game sample size, kind of small, but we saw them take that, step towards the youth movement, kind of embracing that, if you will. So, that's about 60-ish minutes. And I know the other guys are going to have to, Lonnie's going to need to eat. Keldon's going to need to eat minutes. DeJounte, Derek, they're going to need to eat minutes. But I think they can make it work. And I honestly, I don't really think that he's a guy who I would throw into the G League, because I think he's a guy who could potentially come in and make an impact, even if it's not a significant one, an impact right away. But I could see them throwing him in the G League. I mean, they do this to every single guy who comes through there. They did it to Keldon this year. I didn't really think they needed to do that, but it happened, and I think he grew from it a little bit. He got a chance to be that primary option, and we saw how that kind of paid off in the bubble. So I think, again, with the fit in terms of, like, who's already on the roster, to me it still doesn't matter that much. I want to get that player who I think, if there's anybody who has a chance to be that, guy, I want to bring him onto the roster. And I hate to say this because I really do love DeJounte Murray. But if there's a guy who's somewhat expendable out of the younger guys, it's between, to me, him and Lonnie Walker. They're both guys who, they have a ton of potential. They're really athletic, but they don't really have a good grasp on change of pace or playmaking, really, as in terms of like a passer. And I just don't know that, if they don't get there in the next year or so, or will you look back and say, well, we could have had Killian Hayes? Is that something that they're going to look back and regret? So I would take him regardless.
All right. So who else would you like to see the Spurs take? Now, I think they need some help in the front court.
Yeah.
But based off of where they're going, unless someone slides, I think it would be a reach to draft a front court player, at least a five in that aspect. So, what other players, what front court players do you think the Spurs should look at?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, with unless somebody slides, like to me, if James Wiseman slides, I know some people aren't very high on him. I'm somebody who's like kind of in the middle. I don't think he's going to be this, generational talent kind of superstar guy. I also don't think he's going to be some, scrub who fails to do anything in the NBA. I think he could come in right away, be a rim runner, rim protector, and you go from there. And with a developmental system like the Spurs have, I don't think you can really go wrong if he ends up falling to them. But more realistically, I guess a guy like Patrick Williams, Spurs fans have kind of fallen in love with him. They really like him, and I've grown on him a little bit. We talked about it a little bit when you came on my channel. He's somebody who doesn't really pop on film. I'm not super impressed with everything I see, but at the same time, there's, an undeniable skill set there where, he has the potential to be a three-point shooter, a good one, and he has the potential to be versatile and like a switchable defender, somebody who can guard multiple positions. And he's also the second youngest guy in this class. Even if he doesn't come in right away and he's not able to help you win, at the very least, seeing out his development, with the 11th pick in a weaker class, I don't think that's that big of a risk. And I'd love to hear your take on that, but I don't see it as a huge risk if you're San Antonio, swinging on him at 11 if he's there.
Yeah, I don't see it as a big risk. I think the issue for San Antonio is embracing starting all over and rebuilding, which I felt that if they would have embraced it this year, Keldon would not have played in the G League. And I understand that they were probably trying to make it to the playoffs and try to fight for – I don't think going into the season they were looking to be the 8th seed, but I definitely thought that they felt like they were a playoff team. And so Keldon was one of their higher draft picks. If I'm not mistaken, was he the highest draft pick they've had since Kawhi?
No, he was 29. They actually took Luka Šamanić at 19, and Lonnie was 18 the prior year. He was the highest one since Kawhi.
That's right.
And I
Lonnie
guess
was
Kawhi
the one.
technically was Indiana's pick, but by technicality, he would be the highest since to me.
That's right. It was Lonnie that was in the teens. So but yeah, I just felt like they are not going to embrace rebuilding, and I think they should this year. I don't think best case scenario they're a playoff team going into it, because I think Phoenix will probably be better. I think Golden State's going to be back in the mix, and so you figure if the Thunder drop out, Golden State replaces them, then somebody like Phoenix or is the odd man out, and Memphis should be better. So I think they should do a full rebuild. If it were up to me, I would see what I can get for Aldridge. I wouldn't bring DeRozan has a player option, right?
He has a player option, yeah. And I guess with this market at 27 point, I think it's $2 million, something like that. Yeah. I don't think he's going to opt out.
Yeah, he's not going to opt out. But even then, I would see if I could move him, see if there was a team that was interested in him, and if he was willing to do a long-term deal. But yeah, I would just totally look to start all over, and I would just swing for the fences. I would go for the player that I think has the highest upside, which is debatable. So what other players do you have on your list as far as like high upside swing for the fences guys? Who would be the number one player on your list as far as, like I said, guys that you think may not be ready to contribute right away early, but their upside is high?
Yeah, and I think an obvious guy for that one is Aleksej Pokusevski, the youngest guy in this class. He's not 19 yet. He's still an 18-year-old. He has all these guard skills and this giant body. And, I'm sure it makes a bunch of scouts like drool at them out. They're saying, oh my God, what can we do with this guy? He can pass, he can dribble, he can shoot. But does he necessarily do those things well right now? What's his level of competition that he's playing against? And then you bring him to the NBA. I think putting him right into throwing him into the fire would be a bad idea. I think he's one of those guys you're probably going to have to take along slowly. And I think you can afford to do that if you're the San Antonio Spurs and say you want to try to compete, whatever, try to compete this year. He doesn't matter because you're not going to, well, not that he doesn't matter, but what you do with him in the G League is not going to impact what you're trying to do in the NBA this season, right? He's probably not going to play very much, just like we saw with Luka Šamanić this year. He played, I believe, 3 games for the Spurs, and they wanted to bring him along slowly in the G League, and I anticipate they continue to do that next year with him. And Aleksej Pokusevski is another one of those guys who I wouldn't be surprised if he was a multi-year project and spent, 1-2 years in the G League. But he just has so much talent. And, one of the things that worries me about him is his frame. He's got really thin shoulders. He's not really explosive. He's really fluid. He's great. He moves really well, but he's not super explosive. He doesn't seem to always be that aggressive, or, he doesn't really love contact, I don't think. He's not somebody who I see banging down low ever with anybody like that. And weighing as much as Bryn Forbes at 205 when you're 7 feet tall, that's just, I don't know. I don't think that's someone who you can throw in the NBA. But he's somebody who I really like. He's another guy who's pretty high up on, on my list of prospects. But I don't think it would be a bad idea to swing on him if he's available. I don't know if he will be, just simply because I don't know where to expect him to go. Is somebody going to take that swing on him, or is he going to fall? I'm not sure what to expect.
Yeah, I think he should be available. The highest I've seen him is maybe 13, definitely on the very back end of the lottery. And I've seen him play live. I've mentioned it before. The talent is there as far as how he moves, fluidity, skill set, all there. The same questions that you mentioned, I have the same questions. Definitely toughness, but I think that he is someone that he'll benefit for going to a really strong organization. And then by him being in the G League, if that's the route they want to take, due to the proximity between the Spurs and the Austin Spurs, I think that'd be beneficial for him because, they're right up the street. Even though when I was younger, Austin and San Antonio seemed like they were an hour apart. Now, with the cities growing so much, it's actually a pretty close drive. But yeah, I think that the Spurs would be the organization that could probably get the most out of him, or one of them. It's just weird in a sense because we really haven't seen the Spurs have to really draft a guy in the lottery and then be patient and wait. So this is new territory for them. But yeah, if he maximizes his potential, then you have a very unique player that you can possibly build around because he'll be able to do so many things. He'll be able to be like a rim protector, somewhat of a switchy defender because he's so coordinated. And then, a hub in the post that you can run your offense through in a sense as a passer, floor spacer. Skill set is all there. I can go on and just about how talented he is. But again, there's some questions about, his body and all that. But I also feel I think one of the reasons teams are so high on him is because nobody wants to miss out on this 7-foot skilled ball handler that is playing in the Greek second division, a lower level Greek league that doesn't have these stats that jump out on you. And, the last time that happened, we ended up with a guy who ended up being back-to-back MVP. So, and it's a copycat league. So I definitely think that being part of his intrigue from a team perspective.
Yeah, that Giannis effect is real. It really is. I can't see a lot of teams wanting to pass on him, and I don't see a lot of teams being scared of him being like the next Darko Milicic. I think a lot of teams would be willing to take that swing, even if that, again, the level of competition that he was playing against was second tier. He was not playing with, I think he plays for Olympiacos, but it's their second level team. So but intriguing guy for sure.
Yep. Is there anybody else that you would have on your swing for the fences list?
So, I looked at some of these guys. I don't know if he would necessarily be a swing for the fences guy. He's a guy who I do like quite a bit, but I'm not sure that he will be as good as maybe some people hope is Kira Lewis Jr. I really like him just because he is so speedy. He makes some really impressive I don't think he's one of the best passers necessarily in this class, but I think he can make do enough playmaking that he can survive as your starting point guard. And he showed off some really good touch in the post, and not with his back to the basket or anything, but also floaters and runners and around the rim. And I really like him. He's just absolutely lightning quick. He reminds me, and not one-for-one comparison, just in terms of the speed. He does remind me of a guy like De'Aaron Fox. He's just so fast that he breaks down defenses with his speed. And we talked about it a little bit last time when you joined me. Like Tony Parker was kind of that same way, where he's just so quick, and maybe, you know, he's not like dunking over guys. He is one of those guys just so fast. He gets in the heart of the defense. He can get to the rim at will, and he's someone I'd love to see the Spurs potentially, you know, develop, because I think he could be someone who could be special. And they have, I think, the personnel in terms of like the staff, their coaching staff, and everybody there to maximize somebody like him. And I think where he differs for me from a guy like DeJounte Murray, where we know DeJounte Murray's really fast, but like I mentioned earlier, he just doesn't really have this grasp of like change of speeds. He avoids contact like the plague. And he's just somebody who I don't think is all that great of a passer. And I'm not saying Kira Lewis Jr. is a great passer, but I already think he's a better playmaker in that sense than DeJounte Murray is. And he's another one of those guys who, yes, you have a lot of guards on the roster, but I would like to, you know, just figure it out as it goes. You know, figure it out. You know, I don't want to be looking back and they took the safe pick, and then you had this guy like Kira Lewis Jr. potentially blow up with another team. I do really like him.
Yeah, and I feel like with Murray, I think going into the draft, you knew he was a talent and you knew he had skills. You just didn't know what position he played. And then I feel like, and I could be totally wrong, I'm just totally speculating here, that he wasn't on my radar as a guy that was supposed to come out that year. And it seemed like he must have had a guarantee from San Antonio to come out, because he just wasn't a guy who I expected to like I said, come out in the draft. And then I don't think he really had a lot of other first round grades. And you know, then you end up seeing him being drafted. So you kind of wonder, like, was there something behind the scenes going on? But I do think if he would have stayed another year, he would not have been on the Spurs, because he would have definitely been a much higher draft pick. And so, yeah, but I still don't know what his best position is, to be honest with you. He seems more so like a combo. I mean, we know that he's a really good defender, but just offensively, I don't know what his best position is, and the best way for him to complement another like ball dominant guard, or if he's good enough to be a ball dominant guard. So only time will tell, but he's still super young. And then as far as Lewis, yeah, I mean, I'd like the De'Aaron Fox comparison, but I think that he'd be successful there because, like you said, he is a better passer than Murray, in my opinion. But I think with his speed and floor spacing, he should be able to get into the teeth of the defense and, you know, break the defense down. And, you know, like, you don't really want to always compare guys to superstars, but Tony Parker wasn't the greatest passer either, as far as like crazy court vision, but he got it done. He got it done with speed. The difference is Tony Parker is, in my opinion, some people say Rod Strickland, another former Spur, but in my opinion, Tony Parker is like the best guard, like point guard finisher I've ever seen. Especially when he was the only guard that I saw that would challenge Shaq over and over.
Yeah, I just remember him, like, when I was little, I was obsessed with like looking at his numbers, and I was always amazed that like he was among the only point guards to finish like in the leaderboard of points in the paint. Like, it would be a ton of like centers, power forwards, and then Tony would be there. I mean, he could get to the rim at will. He had just this deep bag. Like, he could hit you with a runner, hit you a floater, hit you with a spin move, finished on the other end of the basket. He could get you up in the air with an up and, you know, go under. I mean, there was just so many things he could do. And he had just like this really incredible touch. And you talked about it last time where I didn't even think about this, but he was like sneaky strong. You know, He could take that contact. And he was also a guy who was good at getting to the rim. And I think I like that about Kira Lewis Jr. I don't know his free throw rate off the top of my head, but I do know it's better than DeJounte Murray's has been in the NBA so far. And I like guys who are willing to embrace getting to the rim, because I just don't think if you're not going to be someone who has, you know, good touch around the rim, you know, altering your shot and taking these really tough looks doesn't help you. I mean, it doesn't really do much unless you have maybe a big man who can come and clean up behind you. But I don't really think the Spurs have someone like that. Like, even with LaMarcus or Jakob, they're not somebody who really, you know, is being on the offensive glass, cleaning up misses. I do like DeJounte, though. Don't get me wrong. I do like what Kira Lewis potentially brings to the table for San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I heard about how strong Parker was, I was talking to a friend of mine. I played in the NBA, and I used to just kind of pick his brain and ask him about different questions, like what makes this guy good? And so I said, how does Tony Parker shoot 53, 54% at the rim? He said, man, that dude is so strong. So I'm thinking, like, when you think of a strong guard, you may think of like a Dwayne Wade build or Derrick Rose or Westbrook. He's like, no, it's all core. He said, Parker and Manu, he said they may not lift weights with their arms, but, or, they may not look physically strong, but he said their core, they can take any contact. And once they put a body on you, there's not much you can do. And then it started to make sense. Like, okay, how is he finishing on Shaq? And he's not afraid of Shaq. And he was strong. And so, but I want to transition into Tony Parker's protege, who is a potential first round pick. I think he had a lottery. He was on like a lot of lottery list going into the season. He's kind of slipped a little bit. Felt like he dealt with some injuries. But what do you think of the Spurs taking a flyer on Theo Maledon?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would take him at 11. I think that would be a pretty big reach, but I've heard suggestions like try to find a way to trade down. And if they traded down, say into maybe like the early 20s, I would be totally happy with that. I mean, he's somebody who Tony Parker's spoken highly of. He's somebody who plays for Tony Parker's club, if I'm not mistaken, Asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
And he's somebody who, like you said, he had that lottery kind of watch grade coming into the season. He slipped a little bit, and all these other guys, were risers. We had guys like Tyrese Halliburton show up. We had Killian Hayes was a big riser. Carl Lewis was a riser. And obviously you have LaMelo Ball, up at the top there as well. And he kind of gets lost in the mix, but I think he's a really solid player as well. He's someone who impressed me, who I've seen a little bit of film on in the last couple of years. He impressed me with what he can do. And having Tony Parker there in San Antonio, because I believe he still lives in San Antonio, he mentored Lonnie Walker a little bit this last year. And I could see him kind of stepping into that mentor role with a guy like Theo Maledon and kind of guiding him. Teenagers going to the NBA from, being in France their whole life. I think there's, a strong connection. I would be hesitant with that connection just because the last time we saw that where Tony spoke so highly of a guy was with Livio Jean-Charles, and he ended up not panning out. I think he was kind of one of those guys who a little bit outdated style of play. And he was also he was on a Spurs team that it was going to be hard for him to get minutes anyways. They were still contenders at that point, right? So it just wasn't a great situation for him to be in, and he never made it to the big league club. And I'm hesitant for that reason, but just having watched him play, I think he's a much better prospect, obviously, than Livio Jean-Charles was. He's further along in his development, and he's getting actual minutes with the first team in EuroLeague basketball play, and that's not easy to do. Yeah. Like you said last time when you talked to me, it's like they're not going to play you if they don't have any incentive because they're trying to win right now. There is no draft. There is no, system that if you're bad, you get rewarded for it. So that is one of the reasons why I wouldn't be hesitant. I think he is legitimately good because he is playing. He's starting too. So I would love to see them potentially invest in him if they trade down and maybe get into the 20s.
Yeah, I first heard of him. He may have been like 14 or 15. I was living abroad, and so I was watching I think it was the Adidas Next Generation tournament, and I just kept hearing his name, and it wasn't like really flashy. He just got the job done. Like he made all the right plays, and I remember like writing his name down, like, okay, this kid is a future pro. And then that was probably like 2017, maybe 2016 or 17. So that's when I first heard of him. But I wanted to ask you this question, and I think this would be a great story for you as a writer if it happens. Let's say they move down or they end up taking Maledon, right? And then with the 41st pick, I think that's what they are picking in the second round.
Yeah.
They select Leandro Bolmaro.
Yeah.
So now you have, you have the new era of your French and Argentinian backcourt of the future. What's your thoughts on that happening?
I think that would be really fun. Like as a story, I think it would be fun, but I also really like Leandro Bolmaro. And I think his stock actually may have taken a hit by him, coming out and saying, I'm not coming over next season. I'm keeping my name in the draft. but I'm going to stay overseas. And that could hurt his stock. And I think it will. I don't know that it'll hurt it so that he falls to the second round, but if he did, I would be thrilled. He's somebody who I think has amazing court vision and really good size. He's one of those guys, maybe not like jumbo playmaker in the sense of like a LeBron size or Jimmy Butler or, a Luka Doncic sized guy, but he's a big playmaker. He's a guy who has really great feel for the game. He just it looks like he knows what he's doing. He's not afraid of the moment. Now he didn't spend his whole season playing for like the first team with Barcelona. And I think next year he would have a good chance to go into that role, fight for, a first team spot and be a mainstay within their lineup. And I think I would be really happy with that. I mean, he's somebody who is kind of flashy. His jumper isn't really there yet. He didn't shoot great percentages, but I think it's improving. It seems to have improved. Like his form seems to have improved from the beginning of the year to where we are now. And he's someone who is no slouch on the defensive end either. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be like, all defensive type guy, but he's a great defender at the point of attack and pick and roll. He's somebody who is going to work hard to deny the ball off of handoffs. And he's somebody who I saw, he made the right rotations. Like it looked like he knows what he's doing. He seems like he has a high basketball IQ. He's not somebody who I think would be a major project. Now, my only question for me is that game going to translate to the NBA? He's not the greatest athlete. And again, he's not a great shooter. He's not the youngest guy either, but I'm not really too much worried about age. I always try to think of it this way when I think of age as like, I'm 24. I don't feel old. So these guys are 20, 21, 22. They have plenty of room to grow. But that would be really fun, just the French and Argentinian connection. I'm sure Spurs fans could get behind it. It's super marketable. It's super fun. And I don't even think it would be that great of a risk if you ended up getting them, at 11 and 41. I think that would be a pretty good value, in fact.
Yeah.
But, I think that would be really fun.
Speaking of age, all right, if Obi Toppin is available at number 11, how would you feel about that pick?
Yeah, so I was seeing somewhere that he's actually like a day older or younger than Jason Tatum.
Saw that.
And there's some reasons that I think like people don't like guys who are older. I think if they see it as like maybe they're not going to reach their potential. Obviously, you have guys who are late bloomers. And I think Obi Toppin's one of those guys who has shown tremendous year-to-year growth. Like he's continued growing every year. My only concern with him is just how poor of a pick-and-roll defender he is, and really just defender in general. He's not a great defender. Now, we know guys in San Antonio don't usually get very many minutes if they're not playing defense, but he's somebody who I think he has like the physical tools to be at least a decent defender if he's engaged and he comes along on that end. He's brought along by, the Spurs staff. And he's someone who I think could be, and again, I don't love one-for-one comparisons, but he does flash those Amari Stoudemire kind of vibes on offense sometimes with his ability to kind of stretch it out to mid-range. I saw him have this one shot against Kansas. I think it was in a preseason tournament or something where he shot that three off the bounce and then turned around before it even went in. And he stared down the Kansas bench. And I just feel like he's got a lot of swag to him. He's explosive. He's fun. He's a guy who I don't think is going to struggle to score in the NBA. And I really wouldn't mind them taking him if he's available. I think that would be a great pick for them in terms of value. I mean, a guy like that slipping to 11, I don't think you can pass up on that.
Yeah, I think the Amari comparisons are spot on. Not saying that he's going to, be the 25 and 8 guy that Amari was in his prime, but I definitely think that there are some comparisons. He's probably, well, I don't know. He is 23. Amari came out of high school, so it's kind of hard to compare Amari's rookie year, which he won Rookie of the Year. I want to say he averaged like 13 a game as a rookie. I think Toppin may be able to put up better numbers as a rookie, but there's obviously probably like a 3 or 4 year age difference as far as rookie year to rookie year. But I think he's the most NBA ready prospect as far as helping out on the offensive end. I think the fit with San Antonio will be interesting because even though he's young and he'll be a lottery pick if he's available, he's not that much of a developmental project as some of the other guys would be. And he could probably help them come in and try to win now, which seems like that's the timeline. But I think also if there was a case where they end up making the 8th seed in the playoffs or 7th or however been a playoff team, then he becomes a major liability on the defensive end, because I think teams would hunt him out and try to pickle him as a rookie and as a bad defender. So I'm curious to see what the Spurs would do if he was available on the board, because like I said, on one hand, I could see him fitting, the combination of being young but ready, but also like long-term defensively. If they're looking to be like a perennial playoff team or contender again, how far can you go with him if he's playing major minutes, especially in today's NBA, where in the playoffs they spread you out, and if you can't defend, they really like attack you.
Definitely. I think, and obviously not the same player, but Ja Okafor, he was a guy who we knew he could get buckets, but could he defend? And the answer is no. I mean, he's not a good defender. And I think you have some of those same concerns with a guy like Obi Toppin, and then you look at him down the line, it's like, is he going to stick around the league? Is he going to be someone who, once he gets exposed, he loses that value and he ends up providing you virtually nothing 2-3 years down the road? I hope that's not the case. I also saw somewhere that Minnesota was interested in him, and I find that so on brand for them, because they've drafted guys like Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio, and they have Culver, who I'm not out on Culver, but they drafted a guy like Culver. They drafted countless guys who they've drafted over these last few years. So I just, it leaves you kind of scratching your head with what they're doing. But I could see them taking him one somehow. I really hope they wouldn't. I really like Cat. I think he deserves better, but I don't know.
They'd have to be talking about a trade down. There's no way they're going Obi Toppin at number 1, which is interesting because I had a guy, shout out to Alex Pugh. He came on my show last week and he did his big board, and he said he was taking Obi Toppin number 1 if he's the Timberwolves. And he got a lot of flack for it, but the points that he made up they were valid. He believes in offense. He's like, it's an offensive league. Offense sells. And, you put those guys on the floor together, they could work out offensively, which I'm not doubting that. I just think that they have to be able to score 140 a game because they're going to give up 138.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you have, and I feel bad saying this, but you have a guy like Cat who, as talented as he is, he's not a great defender. I don't think he's someone who really necessarily gives 100% effort on that and mix him up with Obi Toppin, and then a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who is similarly like on and off in terms of his motor on the defensive end. I just think you really, like you said, you'd have to score so many points to overcome that. But I wouldn't take him at 1, but I can admire someone sticking to their guns and, not having their opinion changed in terms of like a basketball point, I suppose.
Right. I was just thinking, like, if they had Toppin number 1, then you need to find a younger version of AK-47 and Bruce Bowen to be your 2 and 3, because you're going to need great wing defenders to kind of overcompensate for what you'd have on the lack of defense from your 3 main guys. But the interesting thing about Cat is I remember that draft, was it 15 draft or was it?
I think it was 15.
15 draft. So at the time, there was a big debate, Okafor or Towns, And the thing was, well, Towns is the better defender, and he has potential to be a really good defender, while Okafor is the better offensive player. And looking back 5 years later, Cat is the better defender by default, I guess.
Yeah.
But he's arguably the best 7-foot shooter in NBA history.
I was about to say that. I was literally about to say that. Like, is he the best big man shooter in NBA history? Because, like, the percentages are there and the volume is there to say so. He's incredible. I love watching him. I got to see him a few times when they played the Mavericks this year. And one of the games, the Mavericks and the Timberwolves, it was like 81-78 at halftime. And I was like, wow, these guys can score, but they cannot defend.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think Minnesota would need to take defense, but there's not a player that is worthy of the number 1 pick as a defender. But then, with the Toppin rumors, then you have to start to wonder, like, okay, are they looking to trade down? Are they going to trade the number 1 pick to get a defensive guy or add another piece and then get someone who they really like? Which it could be smokescreen, but then I've seen articles that saying they're not 100% sold on Anthony Edwards either. Who knows at this point? And I think the closer we get to the draft, we're going to hear more and more crazy stories or whatever. So my next question to you is, are there any players that you think are under the radar that you feel like would be a good fit for San Antonio? Or are there guys that you feel like the Spurs should trade up or trade down to get?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions that I've kind of been asking people is like, in this draft class, knowing that there isn't, that superstar guy probably, is it worth it to trade up in this class and give up assets? Like, unless you're getting Rudy Gay or, LaMarcus Aldridge or DeMar DeRozan off the books and you're getting some significant, like, compensation, is it worth it to do that? Because, from everything I've read and from everything I've heard, DeMar DeRozan doesn't have a lot of trade value in the league. LaMarcus Aldridge doesn't have very much trade value. And, like, the only teams interested in Rudy Gay are guys who are contenders. So even if you got a first pick from him, you're getting like a 28th, 29th, 30th pick. I don't know. I don't know what you would do there in that situation. But one guy who Spurs fans, and I'll speak on, I guess, on behalf of Spurs fans right now, they are really gung-ho on trading for Deni Avdjia. I have my opinions on him. I think he's a really solid player. I think he's someone who maybe could be like a secondary playmaker at his peak. I'm not convinced, like a lot of Spurs fans are, that he's a guy who is future superstar. I don't see that from him. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about him, but I don't see that. But they like him. They think, he's going to shoot the three ball. He's going to be whipping passes left and right. Like he is a creative passer. He's someone who can shoot. He is someone who can defend. I think the question is, like, is he going to be able to do all these things at a high level in the NBA? And he's someone who I think his outcome is going to be heavily dependent on what team he goes to. So if he goes to a team that's going to rely on him heavily from day one, I think he's really, I think it's going to really hurt his developmental track. But if he goes to someone who can kind of bring him along slowly, you don't need to carry the offensive load for them. I think that would behoove him. Like that would probably be the best situation for him. But Spurs fans are really sold on him. I like him a lot. I'm not sold on that superstar potential that they see. What do you think?
I like him a lot. I felt like Maccabi didn't utilize they didn't utilize him well until late in the season. They had him standing in the corner a lot. He's not a good shooter. He's a capable shooter. He's streaky at best, but he's not a guy that you can just have him stand in the corner and expect him to knock down catch and shoot jumpers. But later on in the season, they put him in pick and rolls. I think he's really a good team defender. And then he's good at, as far as like grabbing the rebound and initiating the offense. I mean, I like him in San Antonio. It seems pretty impossible for him to get there. I don't think he'll be available at 11. They'd have to trade up. You wonder what assets do they have that will allow them to get into that range. I thought about if Golden State were saying, like, look, we're going all in, and I know LaMarcus is 35, but we'll come up with something that you give us LaMarcus and whatever. It would be a weird trade.
Spurs fans come up with deals. They have a deal on the table where the Spurs give them 11 and LaMarcus, and the Spurs get Andrew Wiggins and the number 2 pick. I don't mind that. I think Andrew Wiggins is actually like relatively young in terms of like how long he's been in the NBA. I'm just not sure that he's going to come into San Antonio and then he's all of a sudden going to utilize his tools to become a great defender, a better shot select. I don't know that he's going to have better shot selection just because he changes scenery. I felt like he was kind of the same player in Golden State that he was in Minnesota. I mean, I wouldn't mind taking him though. I don't know. I don't know how that really helps them all that much because it's like he plays the same position as Deni. I don't know. It's a questionable trade to me. I would do it potentially, but I like Deni. I really do. You're right. He is somebody who can grab the rebound and push it in transition and find the open man. He's someone who I think is a good team defender, and I thought he was actually pretty good at rotating over from the weak side and getting those help side blocks. Just not necessarily like a lot of pop, but he was really good at implementing that verticality, just going up without, fouling, just straight up and down. And he's somebody who I do like a lot. He's one of my favorite guys in this draft class. I just don't know that I'm sold that he's a superstar, that he's somebody who you need to trade up for. Because I think if you're investing in Andrew Wiggins, he's not going to be someone who you can bring to the team and then say, okay, well, actually, you're only playing 20 minutes per game. He's somebody who's probably to be satisfied and happy in San Antonio. He's going to need to be involved. Like, he's going to be someone who needs those minutes, those touches, those shots. And it's not like you're taking him on for just a year. I believe he still has 2 or 3 years left on that contract extension he signed prior to being traded to Golden State. So I don't know. I don't know how that works. But I'd like to see Deni in San Antonio. He would be, to me, he's like a perfect fit. But I don't know how that gets done. Yeah,
Wiggins doesn't seem like a Spurs guy, but neither did DeMar. And in my opinion, neither did Rudy. And so I don't know. I mean, I just didn't think either one of those guys would work in Pop's system. And DeMar was very good at the end of the year. And then Rudy has turned into like a three-point shooter. He's got out of his, he was known for just playing ISO basketball and just shooting contested jumpers. Even though I still feel like both of those guys like the ball in the same spots and they kind of bump into each other a little bit. But yeah, Wiggins just doesn't seem like a San Antonio guy. But then I wouldn't be shocked if somehow they got him to maximize his potential if he was there. I don't know if Golden State is really big on him either, but I think for them, they knew, all right, if we take on his contract, they ended up getting Minnesota's pick next year, which nobody expects the Timberwolves to make the playoffs next year. And if that doesn't work out, they get an unprotected pick in 22. So I think for Golden State, it was, that whole situation from letting Iggy go to signing D'Angelo Russell, that was all strategic and planned out, and it gives them options. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Wiggins on the move. Or he doesn't play another game in the Warriors uniform because that move gave him some options. So, but yeah, I think Deni to Spurs would be a good fit. I just don't know how it's possible. All right, so wrapping up, where can my followers reach you and read your work and just keep in touch with everything that you got going?
Yeah, so anybody who's watching can follow me on Twitter at @n_Magaro. You can find my writing on Pounding the Rock. I write a bunch of stuff there, like I said earlier. And if you want to check out my Spurs stuff, if you're a Spurs fan, if you're an NBA fan, sometimes I kind of dabble into just general NBA topics. You can go check out my YouTube channel. It's Noah Magaro-George, just my first and last name. And I loved being on here. I love talking basketball with you, Spurs basketball, draft. Always have a good time with that. But yeah, definitely check out my stuff if you get a chance to.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks for coming on. We'll definitely be in touch. I plan on reading a bunch of your articles. I know I watched a couple videos and I like the work. I watched the one while I was on and then I kind of went from there. But yeah, I'll definitely be, checking out your work, like I said, and as the draft nears and free agency approaches, which no basketball till it sounds like January-ish. So yeah, I have plenty of time to catch up on some reading and reading some articles. So like I said, thanks again for coming on. I'm looking forward to having you on again. I want to do a mock draft before the draft, so within the next few weeks. And so I would love to have you on and you can represent the Spurs and you'll have the 11th pick. So let me know if that's something you're interested in and we can discuss it offline. So yeah, cool. Once again, it's Raphael, NBA Draft Junkies. Got Noah Magaro-George, one of the up-and-coming writers in this whole NBA writing game. I think this is a name that you're going to hear often. He puts in the work and good articles, and he's very knowledgeable. So, I'm glad I was able to get him before he blows up, becomes a superstar, and ends up writing for The Athletic or one of these major publications. So thanks again for coming on. That's Raphael with NBA Draft Junkies, and I'm out.